Good evening, Mayor, Council, City Manager, staff, public. My name is Caitlin Graham, the financial analyst for the city. Tonight, we are going to talk about the capital improvement program. And with that portion, I'm joined by Casey Stanley, our Parks Director, and Rod Steitzer, our new Public Works Director. And then after that, I'll do a brief, quick introduction on our other funds that also help fund the capital projects. And then next week, I'll be back and we will do department presentations. And then just wanted to add that the preliminary budget book is on the city website now. And then next week, it will be part of the agenda packet. So you'll see it there as well. So to start, just introduction about Burion's capital improvement program. We have 3 programs: the park and general government, transportation, and surface water. These are projects that span multiple years. Our capital program goes from 24 to 2030 in this budget process, and we reconcile it every year. So we update the expenditures, we update revenues if we've received grants. So we do that process every year. With that in mind, to talk about some of the funding challenges for the CIP, most of the CIPs are funded from transfers from other funds. So for example, the transportation CIP gets a transfer from the street fund every year. So like the motor vehicle fuel tax is transferred to the transportation CIP every year. The motor vehicle fuel tax is starting to flatline. So it's just going to present future challenges that we're going to have to talk about and discuss when we prioritize what transportation projects we want to spend. And then lastly, with that, we're maximizing the limited revenues we have to pay off debt, maintain infrastructure, and then plan for new projects for the city. To start with parks and general government, for 2024 out to 2030, we have about 23 million in ongoing and planned projects. And in the next few slides, Casey will discuss those projects. Before we do that, though, I just wanted to touch on the funding sources for that. So going into that, we transfer what we can from other funds to the capital improvement programs. So parks is heavily reliant on grants. About 20% of the funding is from grants. And then just wanted to add a note that you'll see at the top, the King County Parks Levy. We have going to 2025. It's ending in 2025. It'll be a ballot measure again in 2025. So how that goes, we'll add those numbers back in. But for right now, we have it ending in 2025 as the program, or as the levy will end in 2025. And with that, I will turn it to Casey.
Thank you. Good evening, council residents here tonight and watching from home. I'm Casey Stanley, and I'm the Parks and Recreation and Cultural Services Director, and I'm here to present the Parks Capital Improvement Plan. The first part of the presentation tonight will be spent on showcasing some of the projects we've completed over the last few years, and the second part will be presenting the recommended 25 to 26 budget, and then going on into the 2030 plan. The Parks and Facility Planning Capital Improvement Plan is funded to support plans and studies necessary to allocate future capital funding, obtain grant funding, and begin construction work. Many times these plans are required by state, federal agencies, or regulations. The following plans were completed this year. The PROS, Parks and Recreation Open Space Plan, was completed in March of 24. The Burien Community Center Seismic Retrofit Design Plan, and the Hilltop Visioning Plan. Next slide. The Mosier Sports Complex improvements in partnership with Public Works. This project included design, construction costs for improvements to the stormwater system for all the fields in the parking lot, improvements to the Mosier Park Field 1 converted to a turf field that allows for all-year play for multiple sports, a new restroom, park benches, bike racks, and improved ADA pathways. Next slide. The Manhattan Park Playground replacement. The city currently leases this property from the Highline School District to offer a park in the South part of Burien, and the city replaced a 20-year-old playground and the associated benches and tables. Next. Okay. The Lakeview Park Playground replacement. The Lakeview Park is a 2.8-acre neighborhood park that was recently purchased from the Highline School District in 2024. In 2016, we replaced the top playground, and now we are working to replace the 5 to 12-year-old playground, picnic tables and benches. This project is funded by the Community Development Block Grant and the Parks and General Capital Improvement Plan. Next slide. The parks facility restoration projects. So as Caitlin had talked about in 2019, the voters approved a measure to renew the property tax levy supporting parks, trails, open space in King County for the 2020-2025. And Bering's park system benefits from the levy in multiple ways, but one of the most valuable ways is the allocation of funds to Bering's Parks and Facility Restoration Fund that we use to fund small capital projects. Some example of those projects that were completed in 24 were replacing shelter roofs. Also, that was grant funded by other projects too. Repair park restrooms, asphalt repairs, Beering Community Center roof repairs and HVAC relocation, gutter repairs, adding a mini split to the Moser Arts Center, irrigation repairs, painting of the community rooms, and the Lake Beering Tennis Court resurface, which was also funded by the Recreation Conservation Office Facility Grant. Side note, just as Caitlin mentioned, renewing of the King County Park Levy will be going back out to the voters in 2025. Next slide. The Seahurst Park slide repair the slide occurred in January of 2014 and caused degradation of the sidewalk, road, and utilities. SPU replaced the water pipe in the roadway to reduce the possible impacts due to slides in the area, and the city made improvements to the road that included construction of a retaining wall, installation of a stormwater sewer, grading, erosion control, slope stabilization, removal and replacement of curbs, gutter, sidewalks, asphalt, shared use path, and hot mix asphalt, striping and other work. And I'll come back and talk about this project because we have a phase 2. Next slide. The Eagle Landing stair removal, built in 2005, a combination of shoreline wave action and erosion of the feeder buff and the hillside caused erosion of the footings and the pin piles of the stairs. The city closed the public access to the stairway due to these safety concerns. Gosh, it's too late tonight.
It's not just me. It's not just me.
Like experts recommended removing the stairs and funding the agency. The Recreation Conservation Office approved of this. The stairs were removed in the end of 2023 and a new landing was built at the end of the trail. Okay, and next slide. And so as I go into this next phase about what is going to be funding of the capital projects, some projects that are funded and others are unfunded, we will continue to look for grant funding to put towards these projects. So as the next slide, please. As we go into the parks facility restoration, as I had mentioned earlier in the presentation, the parks facilities and restoration is funded by the King County Parks and Trails and Open Space Levy. As you can see, I'm going to keep saying that multiple times tonight. And is allocated out to the King County cities for small maintenance projects. Some examples of what we plan for the 25-26 is the greenhouse demolish and improve the community garden space, top dress the Chelsea field for a better playing surface, and asphalt repairs in our various parks. Next. The Parks and Facility Planning Capital Improvement Plan will continue the funding for the ADA audit and transition plan for parks and facilities as required by the American Disabilities Act. The Community Center Annex Park Vision Plan, forest restoration plans for various parks, the Chelsea Park Visioning Plan, and the Park System Signage and Wayfinding Plan. Next slide. The Chelsea Park playground replacement. So currently the playground is over 20 years old and due for replacement. So I just have to make a note here. When I found out that it had been here for 20 years, it made me feel really, really old because I was here when it was put in. So I was like, there's no way that can be 20 years old. Yeah, exactly. I'm like, oh my gosh. So it's time to replace the project. Does that mean it's time to replace me too? The park finishings will also be repaired or replaced. Half the funding for this project comes from the Community Development Block Grant allocation. And the community outreach for this project will happen in the first quarter of 2025. Next slide. The Beering Community Center project. So the Parks Department moved into this new facility in 2010. At that time, funding was limited on furnishings and creating a welcoming community space. We used surplus tables and chairs from King County Library that they left behind for the lobby area and made do with old signage, displays, and wayfinding. The project will include hiring a design firm and doing community engagement and replacing the signage, furnishings, flooring, and new color scheme that we hope will create a space that all people will feel like they belong and they know what the space is used for. Next slide. Mosier Memorial Park improvements, which is unfunded currently, is a project for the replacement of the grandstand seating for Field 1 and to replace all the field lightings for Field 1 through 4 with energy efficient LED lighting. Staff have applied for an RCO grant for the Recreation Conservation Office grant that would potentially fund the LED upgrade of the field lightings in 2025. If successful, the remaining grandstand work would need a separate funding to be complete. Next slide. The Hilltop Phase 1 project will implement the Phase 1 improvements of the 2024 Hilltop Visioning Plan. The improvements will include accessible entry and a pedestrian path, picnic shelters, site furnishings, vaulted toilet, stormwater treatment, water and electrical units, irrigation, planting, and public artwork. Unfunded, but we are currently looking for grant opportunities. We have the RCO WWRP in 2026 and the King County Capital and Open Space in 2027. Next. The Mosier Arts Center Energy Improvement Project will help the city meet the climate action goals and maintain an older but very viable building. The project will replace an old oil boiler and a new solution to improve a more energy efficient heating and cooling and healthy ventilation. To upgrade lighting to an LED, replace windows to a more energy efficient and soundproofing the windows, and replace the floors that are at the end of their life. These energy efficient improvements are anticipated to reduce carbon dioxide emission by 19.3 metric tons per year and save the city approximately $10,000 per year in fuel costs. This project is also unfunded, possible King County Capital and Open Space grant in 2025 and a Commerce Energy grant in 2025. Next slide. The Beering Community Center Structural Reinforcement Project is to construct the required structural improvements to classify the Beering Community Center as an immediate occupant facility in the event of a seismic event. Design a solution to secure the building from a structural damage during a seismic event and meet life safety standards to enable the use of the building as a public emergency shelter during such events. The design work is 90% complete based off a structural analysis of the building. Once the project is fully funded, the design drawings will be reviewed and updated to conform to current code permits and apply for improvement construction. This is a priority project in the 2020 Beering Hazard Mitigation Plan, and it's currently unfunded, and we are applying for grants. Missing in this presentation is also the BCC generator project. The Beering Community Center is used as an emergency day shelter for a variety of incidents from heat and cold and advisories, smoke, and could be used for storm events and earthquake sheltering. It is also used by the Red Cross as a shelter in case of emergencies. A generator is needed for backup power to adequately prepare for emergencies and support the use of the building as a shelter. The installation of the generator will require an extension of the electrical power to a new pad, built outside the building, and the generator will be mounted on a pad and fenced for security. This project is unfunded, and we are currently applying for a FEMA grant. Next slide. The Public Works and Park Maintenance Facility Project. Neither Public Works or Parks has the appropriate or sufficient space for staff to work or store equipment and supplies safely. The building they are working in were not built with the intention of them being permanently maintained maintenance facilities. In the Parks Department, the equipment and tools are divided between two unaltered houses at Matheson Park, and vehicles are parked in a separate leased location about a mile away. The Public Works Maintenance Center is a leased property from the Port of Seattle, and it's month to month, and equipment is either stored outside or in a container. Both parks and Public Works Maintenance Centers have periodic break-ins and vandalism. This proposed offers opportunity to consolidate storage, fleet maintenance with Public Works, staff training, and to have a central EOC. And then we have our final that I talked about a little bit earlier of our phase 1. Now this is phase 2 of our Seekers Park slide phase. This first part of this project was constructed to retain the wall at the top of the slope for stabilization and to protect the underground utilities and roadway. During design, it was determined that additional stream stabilization work is needed downstream of the active slide to avoid erosion and will destabilize more roadway after the construction of a wall. This stream work will require significant permitting and was not necessary for the first phase of the wall construction. However, the work will be necessary soon after to prevent the need for an extensive wall construction. Design work for this phase has not begun, and the construction costs are a placeholder until the design and permitting work is done next year. And that was a mouthful, and I spoke really fast, so thank you for
you. And, you know, this is my first presentation to council. So good evening, council, mayor, folks at home, residents and business owners alike, and city manager. Thank you. It's been really welcoming and warm, I must say, coming in. But I will say that Caitlin and Casey, although they've been great to work with, I don't know why they put me after Casey. There's no way I'm going to be as entertaining.
Oh, yeah.
But I'll give it a try. You know, with a couple of things coming up, like the department conversations that Caitlin has mentioned earlier, and, you know, we just recently went through the transportation master plan. I've kind of condensed them into more themes as opposed to the individual projects. And so we'll just kind of run through those. And looking up at the screen here is a very similar slide to not only the CIP, but also the funding mechanisms and composition for the projects. You know, for transportation alone, we're looking at 13 funded projects with just a little bit over $22 million in total investment for the community. And I think earlier we heard a lot on transportation and how that can benefit the community and partnerships. Made up of that is 41% is just about almost $10 million in grants. But if we look at the table on the right, I tried to circle it in green down below, so it might be a little small, but in the years 25 through 30, there are no currently secured grants. So if we think about 41% is the composition of our transportation program, and there's nothing in those outer years, our team is putting into their work plan a focus on getting grant funds. There's over 22 different transportation grants that we look at. And Berrien's actually in a key key area to kind of secure those grants, not only because of the hub locations for a lot of transit, but just what we can serve and need. So I'm pretty optimistic that we will get those, and we'll focus on that. The transportation program, just in general, is addressing a lot of things that are in the transportation master plan. Our capacity needs, we heard a little bit about that earlier. Accessibility, we have that. I've got a couple slides going on. And then a recurring theme is maintenance. 16% of the program is dedicated just to maintenance. We want to make sure that we pick those levels of services for the community to have our assets in place to make sure that we are safe and secure. to prioritize all the work, we kind of just a couple of things up on the screen there. We did look at safety. We looked at strategic planning. How do these things, puzzle pieces come together? We looked at the financial opportunities, grants, and et cetera, and then funding partnerships, regional partnerships. I've got a slide later that talks about the importance of what those partnerships are. And of course, we add equity into that lens as well to make sure that we're serving the community in general. With that, I think we can go to the next slide. Again, Casey's a little more entertaining than me. I think maybe it's the content. It's not me.
I have
But-
pretty pictures.
Yeah, you have pretty pictures.
Your pictures aren't that pretty.
Yeah, and I made them smaller. But a couple of things here, similar to Casey. We'll start out with what's been completed. And there's really three major categories. Just wanted to highlight a couple of things: safety and the capacity. Also wanted to put an emphasis on the regional partnerships, and then dependable infrastructure is the phrase that I want to use. And up there, right at the top, we've completed the South 136th Street sidewalk improvements. Pretty large improvement area, $7.5 million project. That's really, you can see the picture in the top right, adding sidewalks, curb gutter, drainage, the associated mitigation for drainage, and taking care of the environment as well. Talking about the regional partnerships, pretty good. We just finished up the H-Line project. It's also referred to as the BAT project, business access and transit. It gives priority access to the route as shown on the map there. So that's one of those things that we can use to help support a growing community and the businesses that we've talked about all along. Down in the lower right there is dependable infrastructure. It's a picture of the Peter Western Bridge, and that's a $10 million project. That bridge actually started as a result of an erosion problem on the structure. Okay, so a couple of nods here. So that is dependable infrastructure, putting that in place. And it was actually nominated for award. I wasn't able to kind of put together here if we received the award of excellence, but I know it was nominated. So that was pretty cool. Next slide. Getting into more dependable infrastructure. Like I say, it's 16% of the program, and it starts with the road conditions. Up in the upper right, you see a lot of things that we deal with the roads. The roads are failing, and really what this is a depreciable asset kind of conversation. If the roads fail, you're into exponential cost to repair them. But if you keep the surfaces good, you can extend the life of that asset in perpetuity. So the idea here is we're going to be looking at a 10-year pavement management program using our pavement condition index to read that and track that and make sure that we have our investments in place, that the road condition stays at a level of service that's safe for the community. It also helps at all the intersections with the ADA crossing. So we're kind of keeping a really sharp eye on that. One of the things that was exciting for me to come here is the leveraging the use of our asset management systems. We have CityWorks, we track those work orders, we track those programs there, and it really, we can mine a lot of that data to make strategic investments to make them cheaper, more efficient, those kind of things. But all in all, our program for preservation, as you'll see in the packet, is $6.8 million. The other picture there is ADA barrier mitigation. It's another program that we have. Not only does it serve the community better, provides equitable access, and I'm going to add more than ADA. It also responds to Title VI. When you hit the buttons, you can hear the audible impacts of those communicators. It does address Title VI as well. So those are an important part of the program. And we do invest in a lot in that, and we're going to be seeking grant opportunities for that as well. And then there's signal upgrades that we actually partner with King County on this. Maybe the phrase intelligent transportation system has been heard before. So what this does, it allows communications between the signals to make sure your city network flows better. So that's what this program's all about, is it allows the signals to talk to each other, and you can remotely monitor and adjust things for accidents and emergencies and things like that. That's what that program's all about. Next slide. This is not as cool as your stuff. I mean, the pictures are cool. Okay. More safety and multimodal. That is a theme. the capacity, so multimodal capacity, as I'm sure we all heard in the transportation master plan development, it's heads and bikes and cars and everything together. So up in the top there, you see a picture of a school walk route. You have situations where, especially when it gets dark at the later time of years, the shoulders is a way that kids and people are moving throughout the community, and it's not paved, trying to update those things in strategic ways. The other thing that we did complete here, or we actually are working to complete the plan, is something that we're looking at, the safety access plan. And this is falling under a program known as Safer Streets for All. So that's a federal program. So we are following all the federal processes to handle that. And what we're doing first is a study. And what that study is going to result in is the strategic implementation of where we can address safety first throughout the community. That's what that one's about. So maybe we can skip to the next slide here. Okay, regional, yep. Okay, yeah, so more safety and multimodal capacity, they kind of do go hand in hand when you think about a project comprehensively. There's actually 3 projects on the screen, but I'll just touch on them briefly. The 148th Street, and this is between 4th and 6th Avenue. We had leveraged $3.9 million in transportation improvement board money on that, and partnered that with $750,000 of sound transit money to do intersection improvements and extend the left turn lanes at those intersections to reduce the risk of accidents. So in the picture up on the right, you see stop signs. Those will be converted into signals. It will help not only the flow of the capacity, but it will improve safety for all users there. The second project is the 4th Avenue sidewalks. Again, that's another grant project, $2.37 million on that, on 4th Avenue. Curb, gutter, sidewalk, but it also introduces some landscaping benefit as well as surface water controls for the environment. So that's a great project there. And it's going to include the acquisition of right-of-way. So this project gave us the opportunity to update our federally compliant right-of-way acquisition procedures, which we just completed a week or so ago. And then the last project down there is really a safety project. It's the 30th Avenue Southwest slope stabilization. I think maybe the picture kind of says it all. Now that is cool, that picture. Not cool in a good way, cool in that it needs to be addressed. Okay, next slide here. Partnerships are a really big deal, and I think we've heard some comments and things like that tonight that are really helpful to help guide and shape where we're going forward. But the first one that I do want to talk about is a great project. I think it's the Lake to Sound multi-use trail, and that is a partnership that we're doing with King County, WashDOT, et cetera. And what it is it's a trail that's going to connect between Renton and the Sound. Why is that important? Because between Renton and all the way up to North Redmond, Kirkland area, South Woodinville, it connects to East Trail, which then connects to Burke Gilman and Sammamish River Trail. What those trail connections do is allow us to write in our grant applications different ideas that can connect to that trail, so it can expand our network in the local area. So we can leverage those trail systems in our grant applications to provide multimodal service. I think we heard earlier the ideas of, hey, what can we do to enhance those non-motorized uses? This would be one idea that we can kind of piggyback on. That would be really great. So I think it'd be great because then I could also bike in to work as well. And then there is the 509, and I think we interchanged, that's the picture there. This is not the section that connects to I-5, but it does really focus on moving of freights and cargos and things like that in the area. Let's see here, next slide. All right, this one's a really quick one because, maybe I'm kind of nerding out on this one, but the transit center, which is just located a block away here, it's going to include a lot of things that are not only beneficial to the community, but beneficial to the environment. They're going to put in what's called inductive BEB. That's battery electronic buses. So it's going to be inductive system. So when the buses come in here, as they're sitting, loading and taking the passengers on and off, the buses will be charging the batteries through an induction system that's going to be in the pavement. So that's pretty interesting. It's cool. It's a great technology to implement. Okay. Surface water, so just a few more slides. I think I had a dozen total. There's probably 4 or so left. Very similar to the transportation one. We do have the surface water strategic outlook that we're looking at. Broke it down, just almost $12 million in total for all of the projects. There's 6 projects and maybe almost $4.5 million in grants, which is 38%. That's a huge percentage. And with regulatory changes coming up, we want to continue to look for those opportunities to have external sources fund some of these surface water programs that are going to not only enhance and uplift the environment, but also partner on transportation or other impervious service projects, whether they're on fee-owned parcels or in the right-of-way. And again, we're looking at the same kind of things, how do we reduce flooding and increase safety and uplift the environment, those kind of things. So all those are in the strategic elements of the surface water plan. Again, looking at safety and funding opportunities and equity. Go ahead there. Couple of ones that we just finished, dependable infrastructure. We have one drainage project. It's under a program. Maybe I got to get my glasses on to read this one and find where I am here. Oh yeah, it's a program that we have called Residential Drainage Improvement Program, and maybe by another name that might be called Aging Infrastructure, but with a lot of surface water routes going through neighborhoods and through private property, those kind of things, you have the risk of flooding or the risk of, hazards associated with that. So what this project did was, as you can see in the upper right-hand picture, the red line is representing a new storm system, tight line, a pipe in the ground. That's going to help alleviate flooding conditions, or at least the risk of those, while advancing the diffusion of energy in the system, so that when it outfalls into a creek or known surface waterway, that it's going to have less erosion and uplift the environment that way. Meritage Pond is another one. So we have a pond that's also got an erosion problem that's adjacent to the erosion is adjacent to properties. And so we're going to be correcting that. And, together that represents nearly $3 million of total investment just on the infrastructure. Let's hit it. Couple other things, Miller Creek enhancement, $2 million, which includes a grant from Department of Ecology. We're partnering with CTAC on this one, as well as the Port of Seattle. And what this is doing is it's replacing some failed infrastructure and banks in the creek bed. And you can see in the lower picture there, it's installing some habitat elements for, encouraging growth of fish numbers. Okay, let's hit the next one. And I'll kind of just rip through these a little bit faster, maybe just for the, recognition of time. Again, more dependable infrastructure to alleviate flooding and in preparation of our potential NERA area development, $1.1 million in the South 140th Street and Des Moines Memorial Drive surface water improvements. And again, when we come back for the department slides, we can elaborate on more of this if we need to. Next slide. Similar Boulevard Park stormwater improvements, reduce risk to the flooding of the adjacent neighborhoods or nearby neighborhoods. The part that we're actually working on is circled in green, and you can see just even from the picture, it's only 1/6 of the entire system. So it's huge. It's $5.1 million just for that section, and it's going to continue probably for a number of years. Make sure that we can provide, those kind of surface water controls while uplifting the water quality of the outfall. And then I think it's the last slide. Not any picture of an actual site, but we have a stormwater management action plan. And it's really, you it's a plan that's going to result in the highest and most beneficial projects that we can do to help uplift the quality of the streams and reduce erosion and flooding areas in the city. So with that, it's back to Caitlin. Oh, you want this?
And it is time for questions on the CIP.
Well, thank you all so much for your presentation. And Rod, thank you for being so energetic at your first council meeting. Which like, this is a late time for our change of time. So normally you'd be here right now at 11 o'clock. So oh, okay. Good, good. I'll just get us started by saying that there's three things specifically that jumped out to mind on the capital improvement program. One, and these are all things that for as long as I've been on council, we've been focused on these and we've been wanting improvements on. The first is the sidewalks for 4th Avenue and 148th. That is huge. That is going to increase pedestrian mobility in the city significantly. Stormwater is not sexy, but it is super important. And I tell everybody the two most important things of municipal government are parking and stormwater, and we've seen that tonight. And the third is the huge grant from the Army Corps for the Boulevard Park flooding. I mean, we have heard from the folks up in Boulevard Park now, at least I have since 2019. And to see that be funded and to get worked on is awesome. And I think we're gonna have a lot of happy Boulevard Park residents for bringing those improvements. So other questions or comments? Councilmember Moore?
Yeah, I have, first of all, I want to say a picture of a sidewalk is really pretty, so. Yeah, any sidewalk, and that Casey is a tough act to follow, and it's just fun to hear from all three of you. I had a couple of questions. One is I guess this is the first time I became aware that the King County Parks levy was connected to funding for Burien. Is that how that levy is used? Not just for Burien, but.
Yeah, it's for every King County city. It gets a portion divided by the population, but also that funding goes towards grants too. So there's a big circle of things that funding goes towards. It'll go towards grants that we can all apply for. There's some dedicated funds for specific things that they like to fund. And then there's the allocations towards the King County cities. And so they're been doing a road show this last year, kind of talking to communities and doing outreach and doing surveys and getting a lot of input about what the next levy is going to look like. I can definitely send that information on to you guys if you want to see that.
Please.
And then I had one question that I probably could ask to just have some time to talk separately about the Boulevard Park project. I don't want to bring that through right now. And then I get a lot of messages from people recommending grants. And I saw how many times grant funding came up and that we're seeking them and have not received them yet. And I feel like there's a disconnect between a lot of the ones I'm offered in size versus the size of the ones that we're seeking. Is there kind of a threshold or a way that you determine what to go for and what isn't going to pan out?
We go for anything because we need everything. So different than Public Works, but we have all levels that we'll go for a $20,000 grant, which finance doesn't really like very much because it's a lot of work, up to, up to 2 million. So we're always looking for any type of grant that fits within the criteria of what we're looking for. Certain grants have specific criteria, so a lot of times, unless you have that project like teed up, you're not going to be able to apply for it. But then you're able to like, okay, in the next year, I'm going to look for that grant. So we have our list of all of the grants, when the grants are all due, and projects to be able to apply for them, and we span those out until 2030.
Yeah, I'd say very similar, especially if you're talking federal grants, there is a cost to administer those as well. You know, usually it's about historically, I've kind of known it to be about somewhere in 15 to 20% range more cost to administer. So you got to kind of keep that in mind. But like I was saying, there's like over 22 that we look at, and you know, there's a first kind of cut through those is when is it due? Do you need letters of support? You know, is there any kind of other partnerships that need to be put in place? Do you have the match money? Is it the right project at the right time kind of conversation? And so when we look at that, we try, and I think the table that we had up earlier where we showed nothing in the outer years, we want to really strategically look at that and make sure that we're actually addressing the safety or capacity or whatever needs, maintenance needs we have, and look for grants to fit those as well. So we'll have a little bit more enhancement going on in our, that's another work plan item we've added. We'll have a little more enhancement going on in the grant program, but it will allow us to be a little more efficient with how we do it and how we put it together.
Thank you.
Councilmember Garcia, is your hand up for this?
Yes,
Go ahead.
thank you, Mayor. Thank you for the presentation to everybody on the staff. Rod, great job. Sorry I'm not there in person to meet you in person, but I appreciate all the work you guys have been doing. This is probably the most impactful presentation on actual investments that we're making to make our city safe. So I think we need to do a better job as a council of promoting this particular list of projects because it really is targeted at safety. And we keep hearing over and over how our first priority should be safety. So I wanted just to state that as a comment with some of the questions that I have. I did notice that we have a lot of grants and participation in partnership with King County, whether it's King County Parks, King County Roads, whether it's lighting. So, you know, I think we have a lot of work to do as a whole in, you know, maintaining that relationship with King County. But I think it's evident here that we won't be able to be the best city possible for our residents without that collaboration because we would not have the money, just plainly. You've shown that in very much detail. Can we go to the slide that shows the graphs of grants? I had some questions on that graph. More than anything, I think it's really helpful to see the
Councilmember
spreadsheet.
Garcia,
Sorry.
could I ask, there was grants for transportation, parks, and surface water. I was curious if you could specify which like bucket of grants you were referring to.
The slide that had a spreadsheet graph that had at the beginning, towards the beginning, that listed different projects, not just grants, but projects.
The very beginning.
Yeah, it was towards the beginning.
Just slide 2, probably.
Probably.
Councilmember Garcia, are you looking to just look at it or?
I wanted to ask a question about.
Oh, okay, okay.
And also make a request or / recommendation on it. Perfect, that one.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
Oh, that's okay.
I was like, I'm clicking.
Yeah, I mean, any of these that show the dollar amount.
It's the Excel spreadsheet. There you go.
Yeah, the Excel spreadsheet. Yeah. I think this is extremely important for us to kind of focus on because we're going into budget this coming month and the rest of the year, and we're going into a levy project. I think something that's really important is for us to be able to see where these investments are actually going, I think the address is somewhat helpful. I see that in the first column, but I think adding a column with a neighborhood or area where where this investment is going will be extremely helpful. And I say that because I've done federal grant applications myself, having worked previously for the county. I've developed small business grants, and a lot of the funding is having to go out and ask for funding. And most of the fund or the grant funding that gets approved goes towards areas that have lower income and a higher need. So I think it's important for us to show that we are receiving all this funding and that we're also prioritizing where the projects are going in the city by where that need is. So I think I love how our director kept saying equitable access, and I think us putting that into this will help show where all our improvements are going to, because I know Boulevard Park is going to be super excited, right? But we've heard over the years a lot how we haven't done enough there. And I think us showing that in a small little column on these would be super helpful. That's just my suggestion, not a requirement, not a request, but I think it will go a long way towards showing transparency into how equitably we are in deploying the funds that we get. That was all. Great job.
Yeah, thank you for that comment. And that is actually something that we kind of talked about internally already, at least in the last couple of weeks here, putting a crosswalk together that kind of shows where it is.
Yes.
And then kind of like understanding what it means equity wise as well, just to make sure that we're distributing everything where it needs to be in the highest and best use of those dollars, if we can, but if there's like a safety thing in one area, we have to do that as well. So yeah, we can do that and follow up.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that. I love that word crosswalk when it comes to these type of presentations and projects. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, thank you all very much.
So now is part two.
Oh, and now we have part two?
Now we have part two. So now it's the other funds. Well, you guys are done. I'm not finished.
I'll sit here.
Go ahead.
So now we will move into the other funds portion
Gotcha.
of our presentation tonight. And I promise I will go super quick because there's like only 6 slides. First one is the Public Works Reserve Fund. This is where REIT is collected. So any real estate excise tax that the city collects goes to this fund. And just to highlight the transfers for 2025, primarily it's used to pay off city debt, and then we transfer funds also to the transportation CIP. Next one is the Equipment Reserve Fund. This fund is funded through interfund charges from the General Street and Surface Water Fund. So we'll pull like 160 from general, 50 from street, and then maybe 60 from surface water and put into the equipment reserve. And when the need arises that we need to purchase new equipment or replace equipment that's reached the end of its shelf life, we pay for it through this fund. And then you'll see in 2025, higher than usual expenditures, and we have plans to buy and replace equipment for Public Works and Parks to do all of the work they just talked about. And then we have the Art and Public Places Fund. This is a transfer from the general fund to the Art and Public Places Fund to be used by the city's art commission. And it's common for them to maybe hold it for a year or two to accumulate more money if there's a bigger project that they're wanting to use it for. Then we have the Capital Projects Reserve Fund. This one's interesting. I did some digging on it today. This was set up in 2004 to fund the senior center. And at that time, 10% of property taxes was collected and was put into this fund. The city stopped doing that in 2020 when the annexation ended. So now the fund, it only accrues revenue based on interest. So whatever money is currently in the fund and the interest earned on that revenue, or if we transfer anything into it. So just something to consider in the future about this fund. There's no dedicated revenue for it. There was at a time, it was part of the property tax, but not anymore. And then just the highlight is that in 2025, there's that almost 600,000 to the Parks and General Government CIP. And then we have the Transportation Benefit District Fund. This is the $20 excise tax charged on all vehicles registered within Burien. As a city, this is something we may need to look at raising to the max $40 by council action in future years to support road infrastructure. And this is with the decline in the motor vehicle fuel tax and the new federal regulations that are causing us to reprioritize spending. So just a way for the city to get revenue it needs for roads and infrastructure. And then the next three funds are the city's forfeiture funds. So we have the state drug forfeiture fund, the federal drug forfeiture fund, and the federal criminal forfeiture fund. These funds, if revenues are collected from task forces solving crime in Burien and we receive revenues for those, they are earmarked for specific purposes for the police department. It just kind of depends on what happens, but we have them to collect if it ever happens. And then the last one is the debt service fund that we use to pay off any principal and interest on general long-term debt. And with that, any questions on all of the other funds?
Any questions? Looks like you're good to go.
Thank you. Good
Thank you
evening.
very
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you.
Mayor, as the team transitions out, if I may,
Go ahead.
just would like to point out that we regularly speak with high school students about local government. And tonight is one example of the information that we share with students that are encouraged to become involved either by running for council at some point in their future or a career in city government. Just tonight, a few of the topics that were covered were finance through budget and capital plans, stormwater, roads and sidewalks, park